So good afternoon. Welcome to the CURCA Student Faculty Collaborative Mini Grant Proposal Workshop. I am Dr. Diogo Pinheiro. I am the CURCA Assistant Director. Um, if you have any questions about what we talked today, if there's anything else that's not covered that you would like to ask us about, our email is curca@ung.edu. So today we're going to be talking about these student faculty collaborative mini grants uh, and the details of what they can be used for and how to submit for them, right? So uh, CURCA is the Center for Undergraduate Research and Creative Activities. We support undergraduate research and creative activities across all different campuses. We help people finding mentors, funding, recognition, et cetera, et cetera. And I really want to emphasize the CA part of CURCA here, right? When we say creative activities, that means anything that can be, creative in some way. So we don't just cover projects in the traditional sciences, we also cover projects in the arts, in theater, in film, etc. And so all these things can fall under our umbrella. To check out more of the stuff that we do, you can check our website that's linked here on the screen. And for most of our programs, you apply through InfoReady. So that if you go to ung.infoready4.com, you're going to see all the competitions that CURCA has going on, right? So to understand what it is that we can cover under these mini grants, you have to think about our definition of undergraduate research of creative activity, right? Which is an inquiry or exploration conducted and disseminated by an undergraduate student that makes an intellectual or creative contribution to this discipline and to applied practice, right? And so anyone who fits under this definition can apply for a mini grant. This mini grant process that we're going to be talking about today, the thing that's important to know is that the application is student-led. That means that the application is supposed to be written by the student. Yes, the mentor can collaborate and perhaps provide feedback, but again, the idea is that the student is going to write the application and the student is going to submit the application, right? It would be inappropriate for a mentor to do the work in place of the student. We don't just cover the sciences, as I mentioned. We cover the social sciences, the arts, the humanities, and so on. All of these fields can be funded under these mini grants as long as they follow this definition of undergraduate research. So to apply, the process is going to be all done through the InfoReady website. So you can access InfoReady either directly by going to ung.infoready4.com, or if you go to the CURCA webpage, you're going to see that button on the right-hand side of the page that says Apply for Student Faculty Collaborative Mini Grants. Both of those will take you to that InfoReady page so that you can submit your application. You can also look at the rubric and the request for proposals at our webpage and on InfoReady, so that you know exactly what it is that you're supposed to be writing and what you're going to be evaluated on. So let's go over some details of the mini grants. That is what we are talking about today here. So for the CURCA mini grants, we can provide up to $1,000 to be used for materials, supplies, things like lab materials, cameras, computer software, if it's allowed. It can also be used for travel if the travel is done to conduct the project. In other words, we do not pay for conference presentations with this project. For that one, you would have to go through the travel grants, which is a separate pot of money. But under this project here, under this program here, the mini grants, we can pay for people to travel to conduct research, right? The deadline for this cycle is September 27th by midnight, by 11:59. And the mini grants, they take place every year. So not every semester, but every year. And it's generally the last Friday in September when they're due. We hope to make the funding decisions by the end of October. And then after that, you would have the rest of the academic year, the rest of the fiscal year, to be able to spend that money, right? So what are you supposed to do if you get one of these mini grants? You have to work closely with your mentor to make sure that the research is being conducted to the highest standards. You have to present the research that you've conducted as part of this mini grant, either at our annual research conference, another CURCA-sponsored event, or a conference that's related to your field by May 2026. In other words, you would have almost 2 years to present it somewhere, right? And then you would have to submit a post-award report summarizing the things that you've done with the money, right? So that summary would be due May 1st, 2025, right? So the way that we select proposals to fund, right? We don't fund everybody because we don't have money for everybody. So we have to select a few proposals to fund. And so we have a committee, and this committee is made up of faculty members from different disciplines and different campuses within UNG. We have a rubric, and these reviewers are instructed to score each proposal based on that rubric. And so after they've submitted all their numerical scores, we can tally up the proposals with the highest averages, and then we meet and we go over qualitative comments, we go over the details, and then we decide the proposals that are deserving of funding, right? Now, this here is an important thing to note. Because the committee is made up of faculty representatives from all different disciplines, that means that you're going to have people who may not be familiar with your specific field. So when you're writing your proposal, make sure that it's appropriate for a general audience, right? In other words, don't just use the jargon from your field. Don't use words that someone who's not from your field might not understand, right? Write it with a general audience in mind, because as I said, it's going to be people from all different disciplines evaluating your proposal. So the proposal itself has to include a few different things. So there's going to be a proposal narrative. The narrative is going to be where you tell us what you're going to be doing, right? Here's what it's about. Here's what I want to do. Here's why it's important, that sort of thing. But we'll go over more in detail. You have to have a proposal budget, right? We don't just give you $1,000 and say, go spend it. You have to have something in mind, some sort of budget in mind to spend that money, right? So once you have, I need this software that costs this much. I have this camera, this material, this reagent that costs this much. In other words, you have to have a detailed proposal budget. We don't just give you $1,000 and say, go crazy. We go by the budget that you've submitted. And in the application, you also need a mentor support letter. In other words, your research mentor is going to write a letter saying that you can do it, that you're qualified to do the proposal as written, and that sort of thing. And then a bunch of certifications that you're going to do as you're submitting your application. They're going to be done via digital signature. In general, these means that you're going to be certifying that the proposal that you're submitting was written by yourself, not by your mentor or by someone else, and things of that nature, right? So let's go into each of these items separately here. So the main thing that we're going to evaluate you on is going to be your narrative, right? Your proposal narrative is supposed to be 3 pages maximum, not including the references. In other words, the references can be beyond 3 pages. But the narrative itself should be 3 pages, and it should include the following items: the aims and objectives of your research proposal, right? What are you trying to do? What's the goal here? The goals and expected products. Here, we're talking about more concrete stuff, right? You want to publish a paper, you want to present at a conference, you want to have a research report, you want to have a music presentation, right? Methodology and background, right? What methods will you use? Why are you qualified to use those methods? Significance and rationale. Why should anyone else care, right? What's significant about the topic that you're doing? And then the impact on your career, right? Is this something that's going to allow you to apply to grad school, to be more competitive as you find a job, et cetera, et cetera? and then the timeline, right? What's going to happen in November? What's going to happen in December? What's going to happen in January? What are you going to be doing with the time that you're going to have this mini grant? To go into each of these in more detail, the aims and objectives part is going to be where you provide a description of your proposed research. You kind of explain step by step what your project entails. It's where you would make a case for why we should fund you. And keep in mind, once again, that this proposal narrative should be scholarly, but it should be accessible to people outside of your field, right? So this is kind of like that little introduction bit at the beginning of your proposal, right? Here's the big deal. Here's an idea that's a big deal. This is a big deal because I want to do X, Y, and Z. And we're going to do this kind of in these steps, right? So it's the idea here is this the very first part of your narrative with the basics, right? The introduction of what you're going to do, followed by your goals and expected products. And in terms of goals and expected products, we want to see at the end of it all, once you're done with your project, what are we going to get out of it, right? Are you hoping to have a publication? Are you hoping to publish your research at a particular journal? Are you hoping to present it at a different conference, be it national, regional, international, right? So here you'd be like, hey, based on this research, we hope to write 2 papers that will be published at the annual meeting of the disciplinary association in my field, right? So to give you an example of a goal, right? You can have multiple goals, and you can say, although the products from this research will include a poster presentation at the annual research conference, right? Or we're going to have a poster presentation for the Georgia Academy of Sciences, right? That's going to be the sort of goal that you're talking about, right? And so these here are going to be the ideas, right? Goal 1 is we're going to show this. Goal 2 is going to show that. The product is going to be this, right? So goal 1 is the first thing that we want to prove. Goal 2 is the second thing we want to prove. And then the expected product is the thing that's going to come out of this project, right? Be it publication, presentation, etc. Next, we expect you to talk a little bit about methodology and background, right? What procedures are going to be using, right? Oh, and we're going to do a survey. We're going to do a particular type of experiment. We're going to create a particular type of film, something along those lines. And in this section, it's where you're going to identify the tools and equipment that are going to be necessary for you to do your job. And then you're going to demonstrate how you are knowledgeable to conduct those experiments, those methods, etc. Right? So you'd say, we're going to use this method. To do this method, we need X, Y, and Z. And I am qualified to do this because I took the research methods class for my field where we covered this particular methodology, right? Here, it's important to remember to be concise and reasonable, right? Make sure that when you're talking about the things that you need to complete your research, make sure that you're being reasonable about what we're talking about, right? Oh, we need to build a mini nuclear reactor. That's probably not going to be a realistic thing to do with a student mini grants, right? So keep that in mind, right? It has to be something that's achievable under the mini grant project, right? And then think about the standards in your field, right? What type of research is expected for the type of topic that you are going to be covering, right? So that's going to be the methodology. Next up comes up, you have to mention the significance and rationale, right? Why did you decide to study this, right? What's the background here of this research? Why is it important both to you and to your field? So if we're thinking about, there's an example that we've been using here of a proposal that was about studying ant populations in Georgia. Well, here's the significance, right? Well, we spent billions of dollars trying to deal with them. And so understanding their populations better, will allow us to control them better and reduce costs, right? Well, that sounds like a very important thing to do. That's a big, significant type of research. So that's one thing that we're hoping to see in that section. And then the other part that we want to see in this kind of significance, in this part of a sort of narrative, is going to be the impact that it's going to have on you, right? This is the undergraduate kind of center, right? Which means that we're dealing with undergraduates. We want to see how this is an important step on your educational career, right? Is this going to be something that's going to make you more competitive for graduate schools? Is this something that's going to make you more competitive for particular jobs? Is this going to open certain doors for you, right? This section here is the most important section of the mini grant, where you tell us why this would make a difference in your educational career, right? And then the last thing that we want on the mini grant is your timeline, right? And so the timeline here is going to be, you know, by March, we want to do this, by April, we want to do this, and so that we can take a look and see if the things that you're trying to do are realistic, right? If it can be done within the specific time frame, right? Which brings us to kind of a general point, right? You may have the best research idea in the world, something that would get you a Nobel Prize, but if it's something that's going to take 10 years to complete and $1 million, you are not going to get a mini grant, because while it may be a great idea, it's not something that can be done realistically within the confines of the mini grant, right? So with things like this, the methodology and the timeline, we want to see you demonstrate that the things that you want to do are appropriate to be done within the timeline in question. So, of course, if you do get the grant, we understand that delays and things outside of your control can happen, right? And so it's okay for you to change the timeline after you've won the grant. Ahead of it, we just want to see that it is something that's feasible within the timeline that we have. So I want to spend a little bit of time here going over the rubric, and this rubric here is available on our website so that you can take a look at it, right? As I mentioned, the key thing that reviewers are going to be using to evaluate submissions is going to be the rubric. So it's okay for you to write with this rubric in mind, right? Make sure that you are touching upon every single item of this rubric. Pay attention to what looks like an exceptional criteria versus a very good criteria, because that's what's going to happen on the review side of things, right? We're going to take your submissions, we're going to give them to the reviewers, we're going to give them a rubric and say, hey, score this submission based on this rubric, right? And so that is a very important thing to have in mind as you prepare your proposal, right? Look at the rubric, spend some time with it, make sure that your proposal is covering each of these items, right? So the items here are aims and objectives, goals and expected products, methodology and background, significance and rationale, impact on the student's career, and timeline, right? And in each of these little cells in this rubric, you're going to see how they describe an exceptional submission versus a very good submission, right? And so the way that the scoring happens is that once we send these proposals out to the reviewers, they're going to have a little button that's going to score students on a particular numerical value. And then based on that, we can rank the students, right? If you completely skip one of these sections, keep in mind that you're going to get a 0 for that section in the rubric, right? So don't skip anything. And the most important thing in your proposal is going to be the impact on your career. That's scored as twice as much as every other item, right? It's really important for us to be able to see that this mini grant would have a positive impact on your future plans, right? So to start to wrap this up, write the proposal with the rubric in mind, right? Respect the formatting guidelines, right? Remember that members of the committee that will be reading your proposal are not necessarily in your field, so that they might not understand the jargon. So try to write with a general audience in mind. Show enough details for people to see that you're serious and that you have thought about this with enough dedication to have a kind of a coherent plan here. Be specific in your timeline. Don't just be like, hey, May 2025, I'll be done with the project, right? Show us kind of a step-by-step that it can be done within the timeline. Again, we understand if things turn out a little bit different in practice, but it's important for us to see ahead of time that the timeline that exists is feasible for your project. And then again, make sure that you spend a lot of effort to make it really clear how this experience is going to help you in your next step of your career, of your education, right? In terms of the budget, which is going to be the next item, right? The budget is going to have a detailed list of everything that you're going to need, right, in terms of money. Make sure that the budget includes the item name, vendor, quantity, price, shipping estimate, total cost, a link if it's applicable. And again, we understand that once it gets time to actually purchase these things, prices may have changed, right? But we want to see ahead of time that the $1,000 that we have will have an actual reasonable impact on your research project, right? There is no page limit on the budget. There is an important part of the budget where you have to list the date that you need things by, right? And so the budget is going to be an important part of your proposal because it's what shows that it's feasible and shows that you really do need that mini grant to be able to cover these things, right? There are certain things that we cannot cover with the mini grant. Conference travel cannot be covered with this mini grant. So do not put conference travel under the budget for this mini grant, right? For conference travel, we have the travel grants, which is a different program. We cannot support like food, right? Oh, we're going to buy lunch as we do research. That cannot be covered here. And if you're going to do some sort of research that is going to require, in other words, if you're using the money to pay people to participate in your research, which is going to be common in certain fields, right? If you're going to be using money as incentive, we have a lot of limitations from the state, so make sure that you talk to us before you put that in your proposal, right? Send an email to curca@ung.edu, and we can see if the incentive structure that you're looking at is allowable under state guidelines. We cannot pay for individual software licenses or individual devices. In other words, we cannot buy you a laptop, or we cannot buy you a particular license for a software. We can buy those for the university so that it is usable by you during your project, right? So keep that in mind. Again, if you have any questions about clarifying this, reach out to us via email. In terms of the mentor support letter, we want to see first the mentor's relationship to the applicant. Second, the mentor's evaluation of the applicant's preparedness to complete this project, right? We want to see the mentor saying, hey, the student can do this because of X, Y, and Z. We want to see a plan of how the mentor is going to be overseeing the research, a statement that clarifies that the student is the primary author of the application. Once again, I cannot emphasize this enough. This is a student-led project. It's not appropriate for a mentor to write the proposal. It has to be written by the student, right? And then a statement that says that the mentor is going to work with CURCA to purchase materials and oversee their use and where they're stored and that sort of stuff, right? The mentor letter is supposed to be 2 pages long. And once you go to InfoReady to submit all of those things, it's going to ask you to certify a bunch of things, right? First, you have to certify that the material that you're submitting is your own work. And I cannot emphasize this enough. It has to be your own work, followed by a commitment to present your work to a conference, to the annual research conference inside UNG, or to a field, to a conference in your discipline. A commitment to report. You're going to have to check that you're committing to write the report at the end of the mini grant. That you are aware of the IRB requirements if you're going to be doing any research that involves human subjects. You're going to have to certify that you understand that all purchases must be made by March 31st. and that the research is going to be overseen by your mentor, and that the purchases will be handled by the mentor with a collaboration from UNG, and that's going to remain property of UNG, right? And then finally, you're going to certify that you comply with all UNG and USG regulations, right? This certification is essentially the check a box and do a digital signature. So to wrap this up, the application is due September 27th at 11:59 p.m. It's due on InfoReady, and you have to submit those 4 things, right? The proposal, the budget, the mentor support letter, and you're going to have to check a bunch of boxes to certify, to acknowledge and certify things. If you have any questions, email curca@ung.edu. Make sure that you let us know ahead of time about anything that you might be struggling with, so that we can prepare, give you a response with appropriate time. So I'm going to stop recording here, and then we can turn to Q&A.